What's up, my Firefly family? Continuing with our theme of expansion of abbeys, we have an amazing treat lined up for you guys in our area of music. He is a guitarist genius, playing for bands such as Whitesnake and Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Seriously, I've seen this guy live 3 times now. He never disappoints. From the 80s rock band hair to that insane ability to play the guitar with his teeth. And for all you Caleb's Corner lovers, he and Caleb are on the same TSO tour, so he gets to spend more time with him than any of us ever will, which, let's admit it, we're a little jealous. So, without further ado, I present the one and only Joel Hoekstra. How is everything going?
Everything's great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Just want to say I really appreciate you coming on our channel. We're primarily wrestling based, but my show, Abby's, is trying to expand into a little bit of music. Kind of started with Caleb's Corner and talking about Caleb's career and kind of following his tour and tour dates. And that led me to you guys because the first time I ever saw you guys live, I saw him live and I had no idea who he was. So I appreciate you guys for bringing him into my life. He's a wonderful person. So thank you for coming on our little show. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right back at you.
So kind of start off with, the basic, simple questions. What got you interested in music and who were some of your inspirations growing up?
So my parents were classical musicians and had me playing classical music at a young age on cello and piano, chronologically speaking, and it just never quite took. I was a little young, but glad I learned the basics. And then I saw AC/DC on MTV and got Back in Black and all that stuff, and thought Angus Young was the coolest dude in the world. And so I was like, I want to be like him. And so I went to my parents and asked for a guitar, and I'm pretty sure they were excited to hear me actually want an instrument, but I'm sure they were picturing something much different. And when they heard me playing Black Sabbath cranked all the way up, they were probably like, what just happened? But anyway, yeah, that it started out very heavy metal for me. Very much like the initial influences were AC/DC, Ozzy, Black Sabbath, Dio, Iron Maiden, all that kind of stuff got me going when I was a kid.
All that.
That kind of branched into a lot of things as I got older, like, more melodic bands that weren't as heavy, like Boston and Journey and Foreigner. You could throw in there what I consider to be that rock with a more progressive edge of like Rush and definitely Queensryche. I liked a lot as a kid. Sometimes I forget to mention Dokken as one of those straightforward bands. Like my first band played a lot of Dokken stuff,
Okay.
And, so all of those bands were really early influences. And I grew up in the Chicago area. We also had a real strong like classic rock radio presence there with The Loop and WMET, and also I think it was WCKG, that was the classic rock, but that played stuff all the way from the 60s, etc. So a lot of the classic rock stuff was a big influence too. Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix I usually name as kind of the first few that come to mind from that. But I grew up in the era of the guitar albums too. So all those instrumentalists, I would say, Yngwie Malmsteen, Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, Steve Morse. And what was neat about that era was it was kind of cool to like any style. Steve Morse is a great ambassador for that, playing anywhere from with Deep Purple to, playing his kind of country-ish bluegrass influence, with the Dixie Dregs. So that was the neat thing, is I would be listening anywhere from a classical guitarist to listening to jazz guitarists to rock guitarists and anything in between.
That's awesome. So do you feel like having that classical background kind of gave you an ear for noticing little things
Yeah, I think teaching me at a young age to count and have pitch, a sense of pitch, helped me when I, for instance, on guitar, when you learn a power chord, all you have to do is kind of find the right spot for that. So once I learned a power chord, I was like, oh, that's what that sound is. Okay. And helped me kind of move that around to be able to figure out a lot of songs on my own. But I had a great teacher who taught me a lot of rock songs early on and kind of got me hooked on guitar. Not necessarily just, treating it like a form of torture of, you're going to learn a bunch of music you don't like. So it was exciting for me at that age to be learning music that I was really into. And I think that's obviously an important thing to get kids hooked on music. And yeah, all that stuff. I had great teachers, and then they hired a teacher at that same. I took in a mall in suburban Chicago, and that's where that teacher was. And then a couple of us were getting pretty good, and they wanted somebody who could come in and teach leads a little bit more. He was more of a teach you the basic rhythm guy, and so they hired a friend of mine, TJ Helmrich, who became an incredibly proficient guitar player. And he taught me a lot of my music theory and how the modes work and how to play solos. And I was probably about 14, 15 years old when that was happening, maybe a little younger, 13, 14. So that ended up being a really nice break, having somebody who was a really good guitar player come in and teach at that little mall store. It was like kind of a crazy coincidence because, he's done quite well with guitar himself. And so anyway, yeah, I had a lot of great teachers. We had a great local music scene there in that little scene. As small a town as I grew up in, I was in the same local scene as Dan Donegan from Disturbed. And to watch him go on and achieve everything he's done has been really fun. And it kind of gives us a mutual bond of having kind of broken out of our local scene in much different ways. He had his own vision with that and his own band, and that's great that it worked out for him. I've kind of been the guy who's kind of played with a lot of different things to make that happen and kind of build my own name as a guitarist per se.
I think you've done that very well. Especially, now being on that TSO tour. How did you kind of get involved with Whitesnake and TSO? How did that kind of come about?
Well, I'll start with TSO because that happened first, chronologically, once again, throw that term out there. But Alex Skolnick needed to take a year off to tour with his jazz trio, and he'd been with the band for a while. And I had a couple of friends in the band put my name in the hat, and I auditioned with Al Petrelli, our music director, first, and that went well. And I didn't hear anything actually yet to get to the next level for a little bit, and I was kind of like, well, I guess that's a no. The thing was, when I did that audition, they were kind of filming me. Back then it was flip cams. We didn't have smartphones, so I'm dating the audition. This is probably back in I want to say 2009 when I auditioned, because or maybe it was actually 2010 because I started that year. That was my first tour. So because I was auditioning, not playing with a band or any backing tracks and just kind of standing there, I was just standing on a stage in a rehearsal studio. So I just kind of stood still and didn't do any rock moves or anything like that. And I think that maybe was like I don't know. I mean, he plays well, but I don't know about his stage presence kind of thing. And then luckily, Rock of Ages, I was a part of that Broadway show at that time, and we were the musical guests on America's Got Talent. And I remember almost not sending the email to the talent coordinator at the time, but I decided to go ahead and hit send. I went, I don't know if this will make a difference, but I was just on America's Got Talent. And next thing I knew, she showed that to Paul O'Neill, the late great Paul O'Neill, our founder and creator. And then he had me in for the second audition. So he was the kind of final say so, obviously. So I flew down to Tampa and auditioned for him and was offered the job.
That's awesome. And the rest is history with TSO.
Yeah, and then Whitesnake, that was more or less just seeing that Doug was leaving the band, and Reb Beach, we had a friendship. through Night Ranger, because Reb actually played with Night Ranger for a year between Jeff Watson and myself. A lot of people forget about that little window in time. So when I initially played with Night Ranger, I was filling in for Reb. And so we were on the phone, et cetera. And we obviously had played on several bills together when I was in Night Ranger and he was in Winger. So that I passed on some video, and it was kind of the same thing. I didn't hear anything back from David at first. I think he watched like one of the Night Ranger videos and was kind of like, I don't really like the song. And that was the end of that, And so I had my friend Phil Carson, who manages Foreigner, reach out to David and say, I think you should give him a look. He filled in for Mick Jones on 24 hours notice for me. And he did a really nice job and kept the tour going seamlessly for us. And so David had me out and I had an audition and that went well. And David doesn't like using the term audition, but it was kind of like talking for a bit, going down to the studio to record a little, having some dinner, sang a little bit with David and Reb, and everything went well. And same thing, I was offered the job.
That's awesome. So you just came off of a big TSO tour. How long does it kind of, because one thing I every time I look at the dates and the times, I'm just thinking, that's a lot. Like, I'm sure at the end you guys are just exhausted. So have you had some time to recover, or you just keep on boom, 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 right going?
I mean, yes and no, because it's a different type of work. I'm just kind of working more at home, like doing sessions and preparing for things that are coming up. And I mean, the super short-term answer is I had a New Year's Eve gig with the Rock of Ages band. So I flew from after the last show at TSO out and did that and then flew home. So short term, the answer is definitely no, because I think I did that gig on like 2 hours sleep after 6 shows in 3 days with TSO or something, playing a different set of music. So that was a blur. I barely remember it. And then getting home here, I've been busy, like I said, doing all that other stuff. So I don't really, it's a different type of busy. It's not getting out with the high stress of stepping out in front of 10,000 people, et cetera, and playing sometimes very complex music. So it's a different type of thing. I like to stay busy, but I definitely have been recovering from the TSO tour too, as well.
I'm sure I don't know how you guys do it, especially when you've got a few days in a row where you're doing 2 shows a day. And I came with my husband and my 5-year-old son in Cincinnati, like right at the end. And yeah, I think you had done an afternoon show and then doing the evening show. And I'm like, man, I bet they're like ready to be done, but not ready to be done. And just super, super tired. But my 5-year-old loved it. He thought it was really, really cool. It was his first big concert, his first actual concert. The whole family went to North Carolina to see Caleb pay an outdoor show, so he could kind of run around. And so this was like his first big serious concert. And he loved it. He loved the music. He thought it was awesome. He loved the fire. That's what he was obsessed.
I think that that's definitely, the production itself is in many ways the star of the TSO show. Like just the visual aspect of it is amazing. And, obviously musically, we're really proud of what we do up there as well. But it's just amazing to look at. And I think that's part of the formula that makes it appeal to all ages that you were talking about. The kids, they just like looking at it when they see a video screen the width of the arena or whatever, and they see the pyro and the lasers and the lights and it's snowing indoors and all of that stuff. It's all exciting stuff. Or when we're coming out into the audience. And so that it's a really fun show and very unique show. And it is hard work compared to most tours, but it's definitely a labor of love. And it's also something you get used to. I mean, I've been doing TSO now since 2010. So yeah, I definitely am used to the concept of the 8 shows a week with that.
Yeah. So how does that process kind of start when you start creating the next show. So are you guys involved with that creative process on, kind of ideas that you want to do for next year's tour, or what songs you might want to play, what production might look like? How does that process kind of work?
I think management and the production team are pretty much working on it immediately. And that's a full-time job for them. As a musician in the band, we basically get a song list, which is larger than the set list that you actually hear on the show. I would say probably a month before we get to rehearsals. So kind of like, late September, we get a song list and we start working on that over that course of that month until we get to rehearsals. And then we try to hit the ground running. The first rehearsal, usually everybody's very prepared in terms of what we're going to be playing already when we go in.
And then you hit the road in November, and yeah.
And play a gazillion shows in a very short amount of time. Yes.
Yeah. So when you're on tour, what does your typical day look like?
That depends on the tour and the artist, but with Trans-Siberian, I don't think it's that bad once you get through the tough thing is the 3 double show days in a row that you mentioned. Combine that with travel, and so going to a different city every day and waking up, and that's very much like get up and take a shower and get yourself, get to the arena, get in, get dressed, get ready, and go out and do your 2 shows and get on the bus and do it again. So the single show days, a little more free time. So there's usually some like getting some other miscellaneous things done in there. And then single show day or is no show days, the days off, I pretty much teach virtually from the hotel rooms. I found it's actually helpful to kind of take my mind off of the tour. And there's also a thing that happens when you're on a tour and that set is the only thing you're playing, where your playing can kind of almost stagnate a bit. Because you're only playing one thing. And so me being able to teach kind of keeps me thinking about guitar in general and playing some different things on those 2 days off. So I actually, odd as it may seem, I find it a good thing to like work a bit on those days off, just in a different capacity. Like the teaching thing is not a physical grind or not a really horrible mental grind either. So it just kind of helps me to take my mind off of the tour, and days of going out to the bars and all that stuff are long gone. So I just try to basically take care of myself. There's still plenty of time on those days to recuperate and rest.
Go sightseeing.
Not so much. I'm not too big on it anymore. There's been years past where I would, go out and see a movie or something like that. But yeah, I'm kind of a hermit. I kind of get in my room, and that's pretty much where I'm parked for like 2 days. Yeah.
That's kind of like me. I work as a nurse in a dialysis center, and it's very early hours in the morning. And so pretty much on days that I don't work, I stay at my house and don't do anything, and just kind of, hang out like I'm not working today. So I just, got up this morning and had coffee and breakfast and just chilled, because I know tomorrow morning I have to get up at 3:45 and get ready and get to work. So yeah, I'm kind of like that too, that I'm like, I don't want to go anywhere. I like my house, I like my bed, I like my kids. I don't really want to go anywhere. So I get that. And the change of mental pace, I totally get that too. I still have a PRN job that I pick up at sometimes in substance abuse, and that gives me a break from thinking about dialysis all the time and how that works and certain patients, and going back and working in substance abuse with a different set of patients. It does give you that break from that.
Yeah.
Dialysis
doing something just a little different, even if it is work. It's like the different kind of work actually is still therapeutic in a sense. And it's definitely worked for me, and it helps me obviously make a living still. And I just have a thing with like having whole days be absolutely nothing, like I have a hard time with, I have to have like something in the day where it's like that I was productive and moving forward. So
Yeah. So is there one particular song that every time you play it, it doesn't have to be with TSO, it could be with anybody, that it just really, it's that song that just, oh, it really gets you?
the way my mind works with this stuff is that I need to play everything well. So if I nail the hard song, but I play a wrong chord in a simple song or something like that, I'll still beat myself up about that after the show and go, man, I can't believe, why did my brain tell me that chord? So it's kind of all of equal importance for me when I'm playing or touring, to be able to play. It's more of an attitude of trying to play everything to the best of my abilities. And I'm kind of a warm up aholic. I drive everybody crazy in our dressing room because I'm usually like, I warm up with the music that I'm always about to play. So I pretty much take segments of the TSO show, and that's my warm up. And so everybody's about to hear it twice already that day, and everybody's like, there was a time in the past where our past bass player Dave Z heard me start going through the segments, and he went, again, in the dressing
Like
room.
kids wanting the same, show over and over.
I mean, I do it without a nap, so I don't totally drive them crazy, but like, and I try and like find an area where I'm away from them a little bit, so I'm not totally making everybody nuts. But that's always my thing, is to run through everything.
Yeah. So if you didn't get into music, is there anything else like throughout your life that if you weren't in music, that you feel like you could have done or you would have done?
Yeah, that's really hard to answer. I don't know what direction things would have gone without it. My other interest when I was a kid, initially when I was a little boy, I wanted to be a pitcher in baseball. In my little league, I was kind of the hot shot pitcher, and but then everybody like grew up faster than me, and I started being terrible at baseball. And right at that same time, I found guitar. I was also really into cartooning when I was a kid, like drawing, being an artist. And the only kind of mature idea that ever came to mind was marketing, like advertising, like, that I liked a lot of that aspect of business. Like if I ever took some kind of business job, it probably would have been that. But, I never really had to make any career decisions after 11 and starting guitar. That was kind of the moment where I went like, I don't think I ever said this is what I want to do. I just did it. I just kept playing. And so it got a little rough at certain periods in my 20s in particular, where things hadn't necessarily taken off. I was teaching a lot of students and gigging on weekends and things like that. And where you kind of go, I mean, is this it? Because you're kind of watching all your other friends like graduate from college and get their good job and buy their own place and all this stuff and doing better than you. So it's there was definitely some challenging times, but I think in general, my goal was not to be a rock star or anything like that. It was just to be a professional guitar player. So that was always my mindset, that I'd be cool as long as I was making my living doing that. And that's what I wanted to do.
Okay. Yeah. I kind of ask that question to everybody. Like, if you weren't doing what you were doing, what else would you do? And it's always tough for them to answer. Like, I don't know. It just, so it sounds like you had a lot of patience and perseverance, which are, good things to have. Is that difficult for you to kind of have that patience and perseverance to kind of keep going? Or is it just like instinctual, natural?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, there's plenty of times where you're overwhelmed and preparing several things or working on several things in a day, where you can think, man, like I'm ready to retire. Like I want to like not play anymore. And but the reality of that is I don't know. I couldn't tell you, like I might get like 3 days into that and be like, all right, give me a guitar. Let's get going again. I don't really know.
Yeah.
There's a side of me that could chill out, but while I'm at it, I kind of look at it like I've probably Not probably. I've gone further than I ever would have anticipated as a kid. I grew up in, not so well-to-do family, and the things that I've been able to do aren't supposed to happen for a kid coming from where I came from. I wasn't born into like a wealthy family in LA or New York or something like that, or Nashville, where you're kind of like in a music scene. I kind of had to make my way to it just by kind of sticking to it and working hard. And so I'm definitely glad that things have gone the way they've gone. I've been able to do what I want to do, but that also kind of inspires you to see how far you can push it and go like, well, let's see where this all can go.
Let's keep pushing the envelope. Do you feel like right now you're kind of at where God wants you to be?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy all the opportunities I get to play, and I enjoy doing various things as well. Some people, look at things like from the through the lenses of like the old fans, especially in the '80s retro scene, where they want their guitar player joining a band to be in just that band. And obviously, the musical landscape has changed so much that basically everybody's a part of a few things at one time right now. And that's kind of become more the norm of the business. So I just try not to worry too much. I understand that viewpoint and that the people looking at it like that, but my viewpoint has always been like, well, I set out to be a professional guitar player, and I'm not only interested in playing all these different things and doing all these different things with guitar to make a living, but also to improve while I'm doing it. I tell my students it's like getting paid to practice. When you play gigs and you tour or you teach, or no matter what you're doing with that, you're actually getting paid to play your guitar. And so it's like it sort of serves both purposes at once. You're able to make a living with it and not be off to your job at the factory or the office, and get limited time and energy to devote to music. But it just helps me to improve in the process. So again, that was always my goal, like to be a pro. I still maintain that's the hardest thing to do. So that's why anybody who's achieved that level of professional musician, that's really, really hard to do, especially in today's world. So everybody that's achieved that has my total respect. And the only thing that changes from there is the size of the audience. You can have, so when I'm talking about that, I'm talking down to people in cover bands or tribute bands and all that stuff. That's all really, really, really difficult to get to that point to where you're a pro and you're doing it. And then the only difference from there is how good the gig is and how big the audience is.
So we got to talk about the hair, the 80s rock band hair. How do you keep it healthy and luscious when you're on the road?
Man, I don't know. I'm glad as much of it has stayed in my head as it has at my age. I'm glad to have it still in there. I pray every day that it stays in there longer and longer. But I don't know. I'm kind of surprisingly low maintenance with all that stuff. I kind of just, wash my hair, throw some conditioner in there, and off I go. I don't really use products and all that stuff.
Yeah, everybody loves the hair. Because you do look like that, quintessential 80s rock band, kind of style. So if you could play with any person, and this came from one of our regular audience members, if you could play with any person, alive or dead, who would it be?
I had this in the previous interview I did today where they said if you had one day left to live, and I guess because it started with AC/DC for me, it would probably be just really fun to sit in with them for like a song or something like that, play a song with the band. Just because that's the music that made me want to play guitar very specifically. So that would probably be the answer. Although in the grand scheme of things, it's just anybody who's a positive person and productive and talented.
Yeah, positivity is a really tough thing nowadays because hate and negativity spread like wildfire. And that's something that us as a channel on Insiders, we pride ourselves on always being positive and not buying into all the negative crap that's out there, especially on social media. We love each other. I mean, we end almost every show saying be kind to one another. And I think we're one of the only wrestling channels out there that do that, that really focus on, hey, we're going to love each other. We're not going to talk to each other like we don't mean anything. We've really built a family. We call it a Firefly family because of a particular wrestler that I was friends with who passed away in August. But yeah, so I totally understand that. Like, and it's infectious. The people that we have around us and come and listen, it's our positivity is infectious. There's been times that I've had, really crappy day and come home and be like, man, I don't really want to do Abby's today. And then I get on and start talking to people and I'm happy because everybody else is happy. So I totally get that. Another question that we got from my husband actually wanted me to ask you this. Do you guys have any plans of doing a TSO live album?
I don't know. Anything like that would have to be planned by management. So that would definitely not come from me. And I probably would not be in the know about it until, potentially that particular tour. So
is that something that you prefer professionally would like to do?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm open to whatever it is that they want to do. I mean, it's that one thing about Trans-Siberian is that this is something that Paul started where Trans-Siberian is famous for being Trans-Siberian. It's not necessarily like my band per se, or any of ours. We don't, it's more about serving the greater good of the brand itself and what they stand for and what Paul's vision was. So whatever those guys want to do, I mean, I always just tell them, yeah, I'm here to work, like whatever you need, and they ask me to do interviews on the day off or get up early morning to do some of those. And I'm like, absolutely, like whatever you need, I'm here to work. So, obviously, again, part of that is making a living and being able to have a good gig that allows you to make a living, but also improving, right? So having that work ethic to improve on guitar while you're making a living is the most important thing. The vision and stuff like that, that's with TSO, that's so out of my department. But I love being a part of it. It's, not all moments in life are necessary to be the one in charge for me. Here and there, it's nice. Like when I make my Joel Hoekstra's 13 albums, that's a nice, fun moment where I get to be the person who's kind of in charge of everything. But that doesn't necessarily equate to happiness if that's that way all the time. I like kind of being able to be in the a little bit more of the democratic process in a band too, and work with others.
Yeah, and TSO it's almost in a league of its own. It's so special and it's different every year, and it's one of my favorite shows to go to every year and I always make sure that I go on the East Coast tour because of you and Chris and Caleb and some of the other amazing singers and musicians that are on the East Coast tour. I know the West Coast tour are fabulous as well, but I definitely gravitated to you guys. I mean, you played the guitar with your teeth, and I was just sitting there going, what? I mean, the amount of talent that you guys have, I mean, it's amazing, and you guys are amazing to watch, especially you and Chris together. Like you guys are almost like twins. But
that playing with the teeth move, that was obviously Jimi Hendrix was really the guy who brought that technique out. And that was something that I was in a show called Love Janis about Janis Joplin. And just because it was 60s era music, I used to do a bit of that on that show. And then it got a tremendous response from the audience. And then that same director brought me on the show to do a blues theater piece, and same thing for the play out at the end. He was like, hey, do you still do that thing where you play with your teeth? And asked me to work that into the play out of that show. And so it was something I did a lot of on a regular basis. And then when I joined TSO, I started doing it my first year a bit, and they were like, "No, not here. Like that's not a TSO move. Like that's maybe not for this gig." So I hadn't done that in a really, really, really long time. And when I went to go do that at the end of this tour, and I just started doing it instinctually one show at the very end of the show, I just was like, you know what? Why not? Even though they told me not to like 14 years ago, I'm going to do this and see what happens. And I think because it was the end of the show, nobody said anything about it this time.
Yeah, it looked incredibly difficult. I didn't even know how you'd start to play the guitar with your teeth. Like, yeah,
It's not a particularly difficult thing. I mean, it's more of just a fun showpiece for the fans, but it's something that fans have always enjoyed. Yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, you have a very TSO has an amazing following, and you know, it's kind of like that cult following. Like people love TSO and they go every year. And I've seen it from three different areas in the stadium, and all there's not a bad seat in the house because the first time I saw it we were up like in the 200 level so we could see kind of the whole show, and then the second time I was right in the front in the middle on the front row, and that was a great perspective too. And then this time we were like up in the middle area off to the side and you could still see the whole thing. And I don't think it's one of those shows that there is not a bad seat because there's so much going on and there's so much into it. And I've seen like documentaries and stuff about all the production and the whole team, like you said, they work incredibly hard. And so I applaud all of you guys for that because I'm sure it's
Yeah, well, the crew definitely are the all stars. I mean, they work incredibly hard. I mean, that's like the people that you can't say, man, I'm beat today in front of because they've all, I mean, to load out after an evening show and drive to the next city, and their load in is way, way earlier compared to when we're getting there, and to have that full stage set up, and then that's an incredibly difficult crew gig. So all the people that do the crew work on that are really the all stars of that tour. They're the people that make that happen and give us the opportunity to get up there because it's not easy. They got to break that whole stage down the night before and drive and have it fully set up for a matinee in the next city. That's really hard.
And there's some complex lighting, going on there. There's some very complex pyro and stuff like that. I'm sure that's a lot of work to take it all down. My husband does lighting at church and it's a setup takedown every weekend, and it's tough for just a little tiny space. So I can't imagine it being super super tough with TSO on the road. But we do kind of we do have a lighting background in our past, so that's what we look at a lot too. It's like, oh man, that lighting was cool. And I always look at from wherever we're sitting, I'll always go like peek over at the light board and the that area, because it's always, we kind of nerd out a little bit.
Yeah. Hey, you should be, because with the light show that Brian Hartley, our lighting designer, gives us out there is amazing. And he's definitely heavily sought after in the business and has run lights for all the major acts, the major hard rock acts in particular. So, he's amazing at what he does. And I always tell him, thank you for, making us look good up there every year. And I just try to stay out of his way. I just let him do what he does because, he finds his way to making you look good one way or another during the tour. So a lot of people start panicking that they're not being lit in certain spots and things like that. And I just just let him do it, man. He'll see it. He sees it all by the end of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So since we're kind of at the end, I know you don't have a ton of time. You're busy, but sometimes you do a little bit of a fast round. So like a this or that favorite kind of question.
Yeah.
So I've got a few of those. What is your favorite food?
Probably pizza.
Any particular toppings?
I mean, when I eat pizza, I don't try and pretend it's health food. I usually go with like pepperoni or pepperoni and sausage or bacon and that kind of stuff where it's just an incredible decadent treat. So,
Okay. A favorite drink?
um, gosh, that's kind of all over the place for me, but as ridiculous as it sounds, probably Diet Mountain Dew is my favorite soda. Like I love that the diet tastes better than regular and for a soda or something like that. So when I want like a treat, Diet Mountain Dew is kind of I don't drink that on a regular basis though. It's not too good for me. So and black coffee, but hazelnut black coffee. That's what I'm rocking right here as we're doing the interview. In addition to seltzer is kind of my replacement for soda at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Diet Mountain Dew for me is the only one that I can't do. For
I
me,
named
I
one soda
I'm
that you
cool
can't stand.
with Diet Pepsi, Diet Coke, Diet Dr. Pepper. I don't feel like they taste any different.
Yeah.
I feel like Diet Mountain Dew does.
Diet Mountain Dew definitely tastes a lot different than regular Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
So I don't know. For whatever reason, it's a preference. It's a weird thing, but
Yeah. I did it for a while
yeah.
and then kind of fell off and realized how amazing regular Mountain Dew tastes. So um now I've kind of gone back to, Diet Pepsi, Diet
Yeah.
Coke. Um Except on nights, my husband's a craft beer extraordinaire. So we do some beer tasting every now and then.
Yeah.
I've been having to be careful with it because I've had a lot of surgeries over the past 5 months. So I've been on medication, and so
Yeah.
I don't get to do it very often. But yeah, that's something we have in common that we enjoy doing. Are you an early riser or night owl?
Night Owl.
Do you have a favorite specific guitar that you like to play?
My Gold Top Les Paul is pretty much my number one. That's something that it took me a long time to arrive at a Les Paul as my main guitar, and that was my first one. And it's something that I've it's been around the world with me, and it's been on many stages. I don't use it in TSO oddly enough, or with Whitesnake. But it's something that's kind of been my main guitar. I teach on it and practice on it, record virtually every album you hear me on with that guitar. So it's just something that's been a huge part of my career.
Since you're from Chicago, do you prefer warm weather or cold weather?
Warm weather by a mile. I'm a sunlight freak. I like summer is my favorite season, and if I could, I would have warm weather every day. Yeah.
Yeah, I like having four seasons, and I feel like I live in Indianapolis, so I feel like obviously not right now. I feel like we have a good balance of four seasons. Like I like fall, I like spring, but right now it's just really cold.
I like that, but for like a day, like the first day of fall or something like that. It's kind of neat, kind of nice, but it doesn't last. And then, like so, and winter I have no use for. Like no use. I'm just like no, don't like
Not a
it.
snow lover.
No, I'm a summer guy. I like the sun and this. It's very like mood affecting for me.
Yeah, it's medically based too. Vitamin D makes you
Mhm.
happy. And
Yeah.
vitamin D from the sun. So I get that. And there is such a thing as seasonal depression, which is a real thing that people get when, they don't like the winter. They like you crave the sun. Um, do you have a favorite country that you've ever visited?
Um. No, I don't know. I'm trying to think here if I can really. I've just been glad to get around the world as much as I've been. Visited a lot of incredible places. Things that come to mind off the top of my head are, going to Sydney, Australia, or going down and seeing, going to Japan, Tokyo. Being able to go to Singapore, Indonesia, um, not probably PC to say at the moment, but Russia, because of just how neat that was to visit like another kind of superpower country at the time. This was before the war started and everything. So nobody hate me for that. But architecturally speaking, is like really fun to look at, go into Red Square and all that stuff and see all the buildings.
Is there anywhere that you'd want to visit that you haven't visited yet?
Yeah, basically everywhere I haven't been. I mean, it's kind of, I left out of there Vienna, Austria. Just the architecture there, the look of that city is like really amazing. And so I love it there. But yeah, I'd like to get around and see everywhere. As far as I'm concerned, I think it would be really interesting to go to India, go to China, yet to ever be on the continent of Africa ever. So, probably reasonably in the music business, that would start with South Africa. Would not be the time to visit right now, but, would obviously love to go to Israel at some point in time and play there. I think there was an opportunity to gig down there at one point in time that we ended up not doing with Whitesnake, but I was kind of fingers were crossed at that time that I would be able to get down there and see there. Again, everything's non-PC, but I'm just talking about where I've been or where I would like to go or see. And
I'd like to go to Israel.
Nothing politically loaded with any of this stuff. And then yeah, I don't know. I just really anywhere I haven't been would be kind of the answer to that.
Yeah, I was born and raised in England, so obviously, London is up there for me. One of my favorite places in the world.
London was really, the one day I spent extensively really, really going around and seeing it all and just how historic it is and everything like that. The only thing that keeps me from really embracing the UK is the fact that it's just so cloudy and rainy all the time. It's like that's not my cup of tea, but I do
all the time.
I do think London as a city is incredibly impressive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was over there in May, and we had sun every single day. Like I got sunburned sitting in my parents' backyard. So there are times when it's not cloudy and rainy all the time.
It happens. Yeah.
But one of the most rewarding vacations I ever got while I was over there in May, we went on a cruise and went to Amsterdam and Bruges in Belgium. And Bruges had this basilica, and it was droppingly gorgeous. Like it was just one of those, oh my goodness, this massive church and this massive basilica. It was just beautiful. And the architecture there is, I mean, that's what you imagine Europe to look like is Belgium. It was so beautiful. And in Amsterdam, we got to go to the Anne Frank house, which was very sobering.
Yeah.
Able to go to walk where they lived and see all these places, the stairs and everything like that. That was very, very sobering thought. But Israel is definitely on the top of my list too. Just to be in those historic places and
yeah, that's my main appeal too, is to see a lot of that, but yeah, I think I love just getting around and seeing a bit of everywhere. And the one thing that strikes me is that it's not always about like what city is the best. It's like every city has something. You just have to appreciate it for what it is. So I live in New York City, and there's definitely been times like where I'll play in a small place like in Iowa or something like that, and just like how nice everybody is when you go into the stores, or like, how quiet it is when you walk on the street. All that feels really good when you live in New York. So
yeah.
sometimes simple stuff like that most people take for granted, you go like, wow, that's just so nice. It was like, you could have some of the nicest moments. It's kind of about like appreciating all the different places for what they are more than, South America, man, they just have the most amazing rock fans down there. The people that come to the shows are just so into it and vocal. And So that's, amazing. And the Japanese fans too, they're like the way that they, they know everything about you and they make you gifts and they're waiting in the lobby with gifts for you. And they get so excited that, they cry like you're in the Beatles or something. And you're like, yeah, but I'm nowhere close to that. Like, so, but it's just so, neat. And they're just, such great fans there as well. So every place has kind of its ups and downs, I suppose.
I can relate to that too, because every time I see Caleb, I have to shake him a present. It's just, you know, he always tells me, he's like, you don't have to do that. And I'm like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. So, uh, so he's such a sweetheart.
He is. He's a great guy. I love working with him.
Yeah. Favorite. Well, we already talked about that. Since you're from Chicago, are you a Bears fan? Or do you
I am, but I've fallen off of the NFL for a bit because when I first came out here to New York, I was playing 2 shows a week with that Love Janice show on Sundays. And something about my lifestyle has kind of kept that going. Like I went on the road with that and the blues show, and TSO has 2 shows on Sunday. When I was with Rock of Ages, it was 2 shows on Sunday. So that, and in the early days when I was out here, you couldn't buy an NFL package. You were like, either the Bears were going to be on TV or they weren't. So like, I just kind of ended up falling off of following them. I followed the Cubs and the Bulls a lot more than I follow the Bears, but technically I'm a Bears fan. Yeah. Tortured one. Yes.
Yeah. My husband's a Cubs fan too.
Yeah. It's,
I don't know why. I always
thank goodness for 2016. That's all I have to say.
We were dating during that whole thing. And he went nuts. But he's fans of teams that like places he's never been. So like he obviously he's been to Chicago, but he's a Cubs fan, he's a Green Bay Packers fan. And I'm like, you're not from Green Bay. Why are you a Packers fan? And I don't know. It's just something that
sometimes people just pick a team, and that's
like me. Unfortunately, I'm a Panthers fan because I spent most of my life in Charlotte. So I automatically went to being a Carolina Panthers fan, even though they're heartbreaking most of the time.
When you're a Bulls fan, you like Charlotte because there's the Jordan tie-in. At least until recently. I know he sold the majority owner's share in the team, but he still has that locker in the arena there. So I always take a selfie by that every year. That's part of my thing. They know me pretty well there as like a huge Jordan fan. I used to go in wearing all my, Jordan jerseys and all my stuff like that. So they gave me a Michael Jordan NBA Finals jersey one year when I was there, and just as like a gift because they know I'm a Jordan freak. So yeah.
Huh. That's cool. That gives me a present idea for you. Do you have like a favorite movie genre or types of movies or shows that you like to watch?
No, I do a lot of rewatching of movies. Like I think part of it is I kind of like to poke around and get like social media stuff done, like answer inboxes and things like that while I kind of have a movie going. So it's not uncommon for me to watch a movie like over and over and over and over and over. But I like a lot of the Scorsese stuff, like Goodfellas is probably, my favorite all time, and Wolf of Wall Street. I love that movie. It's kind of underrated. I think it doesn't get mentioned.
Oh no, it was brilliant.
But Casino, all that stuff. But I love the Christopher Guest comedy films, Waiting for Guffman and Best in Show and A Mighty Wind. Those are great. Love Will Ferrell with his moments of brilliance with Anchorman and Talladega Nights are great, comedic relief.
Old school's got to be.
I'm kind of open to all genres. I'm not big on like the whole superhero, CGI stuff happening. It's kind of like I'm more into like a cool script and characters than I am all that visual.
Yeah. We're big into horror movies. We really like horror. We talk about horror movies a lot. We actually finished a slasher bracket. So we got like people to participate and tell me their favorite slasher movies. And we ended up putting the top 16 of them into a bracket, and they kind of went head to head with each other. And we ended up one week having Saw against like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something. And anyway, our final two, not surprisingly, ended up being Friday the 13th versus Halloween.
Oh, okay. Right on. Yeah.
Well, the classic slashers. And then
Where did The Exorcist go down in that? The Exorcist made its way out of there?
so we kept that bracket with slashers. We're doing another bracket now that is paranormal stuff like
Yeah,
that.
okay. Yeah.
Exorcist, Conjuring, all of that. Exorcist has really still been the only movie to successfully ever terrify me.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Even watching the second one, like the second one that they just came out with, I mean, that was okay, but it wasn't the first one. Like the first one,
first one was brilliant. Yeah.
it was so iconic.
Yeah.
It just, the only thing that ever came close to unnerving me as much as that is a movie called Nefarious.
I don't know that.
It's really, really good. It's about a guy that's on death row, and he's trying to tell them that he's possessed. And they have somebody come in that kind of talks him through and try to figure out if he really is possessed. And they do like an exorcism and that too. And there have been a lot of like religious leaders that have come out that do that for a living and said that's the most accurate depiction of a demonic possession that is out there. And I was like, oh, that's why it was good. But yeah, I love the horror movies. We can't get enough of it. Our show that we rewatch all the time is The Chosen.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's a brilliant show. I love that. So I do appreciate you spending like an hour with me.
Right, no worries. Yeah, all good. Yeah, I need the guitar in my hands now. I got to start doing some work. So,
but yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. Insiders appreciate you coming on. All of our regular listeners and watchers are going to really enjoy this. So, thank you very, very much. And
absolutely. Right back at you.
Yeah, we'll see you out on the road with TSO next year, I'm sure.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you for coming out to it. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joel.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.